Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. To some of y'all and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. Here's the deal, y'all. I'll get right to this. Now, about the Cash App, I can't thank those who have donated since my part 3 of Why She Deserves Less upload up until the time you're now hearing this. Because at the time I'm recording this, it's only a few minutes after I uploaded part 3. So right now, as I'm recording this, I don't know who you are yet. So if you don't hear your name in this one, you'll hear it in the next one, or you'll see it in the community tab, inshallah. And I want to thank all of those who have supported at any point in time. Let me get right to this one. The reason I tell you all what I've been through and what they've done to me, what the Sapphires have done to me, is because my privacy is intact, and I thank Allah for that. But since my privacy is intact, I'm in a position to help you. With my privacy being intact like it is, I can tell you what was done, and it doesn't embarrass not so much me. I actually lost the sensation of embarrassment quite a while after my last fist fight, and that was a long time ago. It's a liberating experience, but I still wouldn't ask anybody else to go through it because I was lucky. I still have a conscience. I still know right from wrong. And I can still sympathize with others' feelings of embarrassment. But I can't necessarily, I can't feel it. Anyway, because others can, I'm in a position where when I tell you what I went through, it doesn't reflect badly on anyone else. I don't think it ever should, because what Sapphires did to me is not what I did to someone. So I don't see why, say, any of my kids or any of the Mind family or any of my wife or her family should even have to feel shame at what some Sapphires did to me. But we're still not past that point yet as an ethnicity. Maybe one day, but not yet. Listen, I'll tell you this, and this is the main crux of the reason why I tell you what Sapphires did in my case. It has a relevancy to you. It's not about me just venting. It's not going to change what they did. It won't change even what I've done. But I tell you about it because it has a relevance to you. The games that you're seeing played on you, many of you don't want to say anybody did to you because you also were still trained to think that it's something that was your fault. If she did this to you, it's your fault. If she friend zoned you, it's your fault. If she not only told you no, but then she smashed somebody else and for free, it's your fault. If, she lied to you about the child being yours, it's your fault. It's always told to you like it's your fault. But more importantly is this: those things that they did to you, you might think were not done to many other guys, but in fact, that is the default treatment. So what they're doing to you, what you're experiencing, a lot of other guys are going through. They just don't want to say it because guys still think that it's only the negatively selected few that get these bad treatments. No, that's the default now. There was a time when they reserved this for the worst guys in their eyes. That was the case 30 years ago. Many of us still think that that's the case now, but it's not. 30 years ago, that was like that. I know. When I was growing up in my hometown, I was one of the few. In my circle of friends and acquaintances, I was one of 4 guys that went through this. I can remember right now, 4. There were others too, but of all the ones I knew, 4 of us got this kind of treatment. 4 of us. And the treatment included being friend zoned, to low boiling contempt, to outright hatred. That's the type of treatment. The treatment extended between those levels, those degrees of severity. Now, if I look at what the other guys had in common, the one with whom I can most closely identify was Fresh Prince, not the actual William Smith, but I mean the one that we grew up with that looked like it, the one that later on became a baby daddy to a married woman. That's another story. Fresh Prince actually kind of looked like Will Smith in some ways, especially with the ears. But Fresh Prince, he was generally an all-around good dude, but he tried too hard to get acceptance from certain types of guys. Now, he didn't try to be friends with the thugs. He just wanted to be respected. I don't blame him for wanting that, but he went about it the wrong way. But when it came to the fraternity guys, he tried a little too hard. That was a mistake. They saw through it. In any case, I'll state this. Will Smith was not a pushover. He was not soft. He could throw them hands. He wasn't a boxer, but he could throw them hands if he needed, and he did. He was not easy to beat up. Sisters didn't understand this about him because he wasn't street. And in the end, it showed up that he was not street. That he was a good guy. And he ran with guys that were generally good guys, and that was enough. Next thing was next one was Skinny. Skinny actually had some stereotypically white behaviors. Even in the music to which he listened to wasn't rock and roll music. He seemed to know about it, but he didn't listen to it. But he pretty much, I think he listened to Diggable Planets, and that was it. And that genre, and that was it. He only listened to like Diggable Planets and whoever that came out with that song is They Keep On Passing Me By. That's all he listened to. Nothing else. If it was actually popular, he didn't listen that much, except Wu-Tang. Later, we can look back and say that some of the stereotypically white behaviors he had were not actually white behaviors. They were 5%er traits, but we didn't know about them. We were not aware of that. Gulf Coast was very conservative back then for all of the political corruption for which the region is famous. Next. So that's Skinny, you know. He actually in some ways was weird. Not in his behaviors, but in his taste he was weird, I'd say. His music and his dress were weird. Everything else about him was pretty much normal, except he was not street. He was not a stereotype. That was not the case. And he shouldn't have been. More. There's more with this. There's more. There was Blondie. Now, Blondie was less recognizable as a black man than I am. His hair, though quite curly, is dark blonde. His eyes are hazel. I'm older than him, so I remember when he was actually a smaller child than me, and it was bad. It was messed up. He was hyper scrutinized for everything that he did or said. When I look at what they all had in common, it was that they were perceived as being easy to beat. I was perceived that way too until I started actually punching some folks. And I told you all how that changed in the last few months of me living in my hometown. And how I really never forgave sisters for talking about being the black woman and then in the end only wanting knuckle dragging, fist throwing stereotypes. I don't want to hear about how they want security and to feel protected they went too far, but they also lied about it. But that's what I talked about in part 3, the lying, the gaslighting. What I'm talking about in this case is that the mistreatments for which we, the 4 of us, were slated were not standard across the board at that point in time. A lot of us black men are still stuck with the impression from that point in time, but it's changed. Now it's generalized. It's across the board. See, there was another guy. He was not in the circle of us. I knew some folks that knew him. I met him, actually. His name is not TD Jakes, but his initials are TD, and he is a church guy. I'm sure he still is if he's still alive. Church brother. He was a virgin, and he confessed he was a horny virgin, but he was church, so he wasn't about to fornicate, but he wound up getting married to this single mother. Now, a girlfriend of mine actually knew him from church circles. And she said to me once, "Oh, he got married." And I said, "You got to be kidding me." And she said, "No." She showed me a photograph. And then she said, I looked at the lady, and from the hairstyle, I knew she was kind of hood. And I said, "How did he impress her?" And this girlfriend of mine, this is back in the 90s, okay? It's not even 1999 yet. It's back in the 90s. This girlfriend of mine said, "Oh, she has a child." I said, "Are you saying that he couldn't have married her if she wasn't already a mom?" And she said, "No, she wouldn't." So you see, this tells me that women know that actually being a single mother it doesn't up their value. They know this. I've heard childless black women bragging about not having kids. I've heard that. So they know. They know what knocks them down. They know that disease, that STI, knocks them down in value. The child knocks them down in value. The weight knocks them down in value. They know this. That's why when they don't have any of these things, they cannot have a pleasant attitude. Can't do it. Unless, of course, it's for a white dude. Now, that's another thing we're going to have to talk about later on. Not Average Man Unplugged, but Medium Man actually showed the clip in which a woman who wrote a book called White Man's Whore said that when you want one of them, you can't treat them the way that you treat brothers. So you see, now what they're doing is they're comparing us to other groups and saying we're going to treat these black men worse. But 30 years ago, they were comparing non-stereotypical black men to other black men and saying we're going to treat them worse. And I was one of them. I was the one out of the ones that I knew. I was the one that broke out of that because of the fistfights, especially the last one. 2 of them were within 2 weeks of each other. All 3 were within a year. In every single case, I threw the first punch. Now, one guy did swing at me first, but I knew it was coming and he missed. So I actually threw the first one and connected. And I provoked him. He provoked the argument. I provoked the fight. I just took it there like, get up out my face. And then I shoved him like, get the F out my face. And I was doing this in his driveway. I was really disrespectful. Once he showed bravery, I got disrespectful in his own driveway. And I was armed. I was planning on really permanently injuring his skull. If he had not asked our mutual friends, his ex-friends, to come break the fight up, I would have permanently hurt him. Not for being bigger and stronger, but for having the courage to stand up to me when he backed down like a bitch to somebody else. And I would do it again. That's the childhood enemy I told you about in part 3 of Why She Deserves Less. Same guy that gave me that one thing he told me that was good advice was about so-called da bitches, because that's how he referred to them. He say hoes, girls, and bitches. Anyway, this guy here was, he was a real disrespectful one. And I got disrespectful with him. But the other one let this guy punk him. The third one let that second guy punk him. And they didn't know each other, but I knew them both. And it was just luck that I happened to be on a stage where I could look into the crowd that was dancing to see this event unfold. If I had not seen it, I would not have thought about the third guy wound up fighting. And next time he showed me bravery, I did the same thing to him I did to the guy that punked him. I'm like, I know niggas can punk you, so you are going to pay for having bravery and courage with me, and I didn't even provoke you. And if he had gotten up and if we had not been separated by his friends jumping in and my friends jumping in, I would have beaten him to death. And I threw the first punch. I hated it. I didn't like it. But the thing is that I had to get this damn violent and this determined to inflict pain on other black males. For black women to just show some respect, act like I'm equal to other men. At this point, other boys. So I've never looked at black women from my hometown the same. I thought it was going to be different in Atlanta. And to a certain extent, I actually thought it was. But when I look back, I realized, no, it wasn't. I didn't know how to interpret what I was seeing. But when I look back, I realized, no, it was not. But what I want you guys to understand is that what you are facing now is a default. Each one of you is facing this. You may not, well, most of you, almost each one of you is facing this. If you're not, you know why it is. You may not know that the other guy's facing the same thing. So you hide it. You don't talk about it, but you're in the audience. So you know. You just don't know how many other guys are going through this. But I know this because I've tracked it. And from about 2019 onwards, I became aware of something. And that is that what they did to me and the treatments for which they singled out me and the four others whom I've mentioned to you, including TD. They're now not even singling you out for it. They're doing this to you by default. They're either blind to you or they seek to do this to you. And if you are selected for their better treatment, then it is because you are of the rare exceptions or because of something they know they've got wrong with them or some combination. But that's it. But it started off as some of us being singled out for this. And that's how I know what they're doing to you. And I wanted you to understand that nowadays, see, the impression you got that it's just you and you better not tell anybody because it'll just make you look bad. That's part of the gaslighting. But I wanted you also to understand that while that was true at one point, it might have just been a few of us that were going through that. Nowadays, no. Now that's the default. That's the default. If they cannot mistreat a particular man, but he's also not that type, then they're blind to him. There's nothing they can do. Or they'll try to slander him because there's nothing they can do. They can't bring themselves to actually like him and treat him well, but they can't mistreat him enough. I mean, they can't even get close enough to mistreat him because he's not blind to that. So then they might slander his reputation or something like that. But or if you're one of the lucky guys, really, they don't notice you. And I can tell you one thing about LOM. Shouts out to Lion of MGTOW. One thing I do know is that Lion of MGTOW actually intentionally picks a style that makes them overlook him because they're busy looking for someone else. He intentionally did it. I'm not going to say it because I'm not doxing him. What I'm telling you is that he's smart. He makes sure that they don't. He does what he can to either not be noticed or to appear to not know what year it is. That's smart. That's slick. He flies under their radar intentionally. He's the kind that cannot befriend them because he's actually the type that could slide out of the friend zone and into them drawers. And he doesn't want that kind of attention. But for the most part, you're lucky if they are blind to you. But no, I don't want you all thinking this anymore. that, when they mistreat you, when they friend zone you at best and show you full on hatred at worst and low boiling contempt a lot of times and every so often, that it's just you and they're not doing this across the board. No, now they are doing it across the board. But by not letting you know that they're doing this across the board, see, they let each other know that because that's what they're supposed to do socially, to be approved of by each other. But by not letting you know that they are doing this across the board, you think it's just you, and therefore you're always shooting to try to get more stuff with which to provide them, you see. Always willing to work harder for their benefit. And that's the mistake for us if we fall for it. They found this out. They messed around and they found out that if they got, if they messed around and found out that some guys, if they were singled out for the mistreatment, they would work harder to not be those guys that were being mistreated. That's what they found out. So they say we could generalize this. And then all the guys will start working harder to not be those dudes. We get more out the deal. And so while they're busy out there trying to do this, that, and the other, we can sit up here and, sleep with the guy we want to sleep with and then present his baby to the worker, the provider, the stable guy. It's your baby. Now, they don't know what to do with the DNA test, paternity testing. They don't know what to do about that. That's why Kirk Franklin's mom did what she did and just denied it. She doesn't know what to do. What else is she going to do? She can't take accountability because she's a sister, church or not. She can't do that to her own son. Oh, God, no. She sees him as the little nappy-headed N-word she gave up already. That's what she sees. Low boiling contempt at best. And that's what she sees. So that's kind of like that's the thing that the two things that really mess these things up for them. Your ability to travel, the passport, paternity testing. Now, there's also their need for attention, which is why some of them are on social media just blowing up the game, blowing up the spot, telling everybody what's going on, betraying the secrecy and the conspiracy. So there's that. But then there's also the fact that men are comparing notes and the paternity testing and the ability to travel and men finding out you ain't got to deal with this like I did when I left. But I wanted you to know that no, don't for 1 second think that you're being singled out for the mistreatment because there's just something that wrong with you. They banked on us thinking this based on the time when it would have been true, but it ain't no more. No, don't fall for that, man. Absolutely, gentlemen. No, do not. I know because I was one of the first ones on whom they did this and experimented with this type of treatment on in my home region, in my hometown. When I was coming up, they weren't doing it to everyone. There were a lot of guys that just got a kind of medium treatment from them. There were a lot of guys that did, but I didn't get a medium treatment till I started fighting. Really, it was after my third fight. Imagine that. I got to go through 3 of them. After the second one, I see a bit of improvement. And after the third one, hell, I'm finally fit to be treated equally to other men that smashed already. But then, it's time to move out and go to Atlanta for school. Now, it started all over again in Atlanta, and that's another story, but I'm not going to go into that. It's not appropriate for here. The important thing I wanted you to understand is that when I talk about what they did to me, I'm doing that so you understand that I know firsthand what I'm talking about. If it wasn't me, then I saw somebody else go through it. Usually it's a combination of it, and so that you understand that they started with me, so I know why you're going through it, and I know it ain't your fault in most cases. That's why. One of the last things they ever want me to tell any of you is that it ain't your fault. I hope this helps. As always, thanks for listening. Black Heart, Black Mind, Blackout. Assalamu alaikum. Black heterosexual non-select male power because she don't like it. And Black patriarchy until extinction of Judgment Day. Thank you again for flying with us on Jet Black Airways, where Jet Black is also a verb. Keep Jet Black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender justice forever.